What's up, everybody? It's the Alex Leak and Friends NFL podcast back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. We got a special guest on the show, former 15-year NFL linebacker, Chad Brown. Chad, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For those of you that don't know, Chad is a former Steelers, Seahawks, and Patriots linebacker. He's currently an NFL and college football analyst and sports radio host in Denver for 104.3 The Fan. Chad, is your fourth time on the show. We really appreciate all the support and your willingness to come on.
It's always good to talk ball with somebody, so all good, my friend.
Absolutely. So this is really well timed as just yesterday, the Broncos hired Sean Payton to be their head coach. What did you think of the move and the hiring process? It was kind of a little chaotic, but I feel like they got the best guy for the job.
Well, I'll go last question first. The hiring process, there was not a lot of detail given out. Last year, when they hired Nathaniel Hackett, there were updates, emails, the press releases from the team, when they interviewed, who they were going to interview, when the interviews were done. So the fan base and the media felt completely involved in that. This year, because there was not a lot of conversation coming from the Walton Penner Group, which is now the new owners of the Broncos, it was a bit of an odd thing because we got bits and pieces of news, but no real confirmed facts. So, as we all know, when we don't have all the story, we kind of make up stories for the parts that we don't know. So, Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter had conflicting reports come out yesterday, 13 minutes apart. Ian Rappaport saying that D'Amico Ryans was part of the picture and was given a job offer. Adam Schefter said he wasn't. But in the end, despite all the, I think, 8 different candidates interviewed, flying to Michigan to interview Harbaugh a second time, all that stuff, they got Sean Payton, which I think is the best coach to move Russell Wilson forward. This
Yeah.
Broncos team over the next 2 seasons is pretty much bound to Russell Wilson because of the contract. They're not going to be able to get rid of that. So amongst the Dan Quinns and D'Amico Ryans, both defensive side of the ball coaches, versus a Sean Payton seems to be the coach the best prepared to walk into the door and be able to help out Russell Wilson and figure out what the issue was this last season, where Russell Wilson was not the Russell Wilson we saw at all in Seattle.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think they got the right guy, a home run hire. Anytime you can get a big name like Sean Payton, proven success with the quarterback position, it's a great move. And you also there's a lot going on out there in Colorado because Colorado University gets Deion Sanders to be their head coach. Got to be a good time to be talking sports out there, huh?
It is. It is. Now, I went to CU, of course, and I was part of the one national championship in CU's history.
Yeah.
So we have been hungry for a return to those glory days for almost 2 decades now. And the program just seemed to get further and further and further away from that. Now, with the hiring of Coach Prime, as he is requested to be called, the amount of 4 and 5 star recruits is absolutely mind blowing. Haven't seen things like that since I was on campus. The NIL dollars are flowing. The participation in the program from former players, from alumni, the amount of donations to the program. They're talking about the spring game may actually be a sellout. I believe they barely had 1,000 people last year. So
Wow.
the 8 weeks of Coach Prime has already turned the program around pretty much completely. 40 plus new kids coming onto the scene. I do feel bad for those kids who are going to lose their scholarship because, Carl Durrell, the previous coach, made promises to those kids when he sat on their mom's couch and drank their mom's coffee. And I'm going to take care of you at CU. And now that Coach Prime can bring in a better player, unfortunately, those kids are going to lose their scholarship. But that is unfortunately the way the college football works today. So 40 plus new kids this year. I'd imagine Coach Prime will bring another 40 plus next year as well.
Wow.
Really trying to overhaul this roster. I'm looking for a Buffs bowl win next season. They only won 1 game last year. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see the Buffs return to glory. I don't think Coach Prime is a long-term fit for Boulder. Obviously, at some point, some Big Ten school or some SEC school, if he's successful with the Buffaloes, are going to offer him some ungodly amount of money. It's going to be impossible for him to turn around. But at the very least, he would leave Boulder far better off than when he walked on campus. CU and Stanford had some of the most difficult transfer rules in college football. So with the transfer rules being what they are, where you can go back and forth pretty much at will for most schools, CU and Stanford had a very stringent academic standards for transfers coming in. Therefore, they lost 28 transfers last year, but only brought in 3. So
Wow.
the administration has changed that rule. The administration approved a higher coach's salary, a higher salary pool for the assistant coaches. So just those 3 things alone now brings CU up to the standards of modern college football. And so if whoever walks into the door next and has that coaching office next is going to inherit a much better situation that Dion walked into.
Yeah, absolutely. So sounds great. Things moving in the right direction.
It is a good
Um,
time to be a football fan in Colorado, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. So, and then you're a former Steeler. What did you think of the Steelers season? It's kind of an adjustment period with Big Ben retiring. They bring in Mitch Trubisky. They draft Kenny Pickett. And to still finish above 500, be this close to making the playoffs. What did you think of the Steelers and rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett?
Mike Tomlin has been the head coach of the Steelers for 16 seasons, has not had a losing record, kept his streak alive thanks to that late season push they made as a football team. When you move on from a quarterback like Ben, who's been around for such a long period of time, there's a transition period.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not just in the quarterback room, but across the whole team. Not only was Ben the quarterback, but he was the leader. He was the face of the franchise. It takes time to move on from that. And I think anybody with any real football sense, knew that Mitch Trubisky was not going to be the long-term starter there. He was there to fill in until Kenny Pickett got ready. Kenny Pickett went out there, took a couple of games for him to get up to speed with the NFL game. But I think he's showing some promise. And let's face it, Steeler football, although Big Ben had a couple of years where he was lighting up as a quarterback, Steeler football is running the ball, playing really physical defense. So the emergence of Najee Harris late in the season, the
Yeah.
defense continuing to get better. TJ Watt coming back from the injury and looking kind of TJ Watt-ish. Those are all good signs for next season. And then as a player, particularly a young player, you make your most improvement from year 1 to year 2 because you have a chance to watch the tape and roll your eyes in disgust at how awful that was and all that kind of stuff. And you get the off-season program in place so you don't make those same dumb mistakes again, all those rookie mistakes. So hopefully Kenny Pickett will get all those out the way, and we'll be ready to hit year 2 running full speed.
Absolutely. And a very similar story in Seattle with they move on from Russell Wilson. And I thought, man, I had my preseason prediction was the Seahawks going like 4-13. I didn't think they had it. I thought it was a big loss, losing Russell Wilson. And Geno Smith really came in and played very well. The best I've seen him play in his career. Rookie Kenneth Walker stepped up really well. How about the job that Seattle did getting back to the playoffs without Russell Wilson?
Got to be impressed with what John Snyder and Pete Carroll were able to pull off. 2 offensive tackles, both the right and the left tackle, both those guys were rookies. The one of the best young corners in the NFL was a rookie for them this year. So John Snyder did a tremendous job in the draft. Pete Carroll's program has always been about competition. Doesn't matter how many years of experience you have or how much money you make. You got to compete for your job. So those rookies were able to compete and win those jobs. And then you talked about the rookie runner, Kenneth Walker, physical, tough, hard nosed. The best years for Russell Wilson when he was in Seattle were when they had a top 10 rushing attack and a top 5 defense. Now, that defense certainly has a ways to go to be a top 5 defense again, but they ran the ball in that kind of style this year. So, with Geno Smith proven to be the kind of quarterback who he always believed he was, and I think we thought he never could turn out to be, you marry that with a consistent, steady rushing attack and an improving defense, I think Seattle's going to make noise for a couple years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so the LA Chargers, if you watch that playoff game was incredible, right? They blew a 27-0 lead in Jacksonville. They retained head coach Brandon Staley. I'm not I'm surprised by that. I would have fired him after last season. I definitely would have fired him after this season. Then they bring in offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. I'm not sold on that either. Where do you think the Chargers are going forward with where they're at?
Well, obviously, they got one of the best young quarterbacks in the game in Justin Herbert. He is getting shoulder surgery, but on his left shoulder, not his right shoulder, not his throwing arm. So hopefully, he'll be able to recover from that because he's a guy who can make plays with his legs. So I think he's going to need both shoulders to be able to withstand that. But Brandon Staley last year was captain analytics, even when it just didn't make any sense, and he hurt his team over and over and over last season. And then this year, the playoff loss that you talked about, I was pretty sure that they were going to let him go because that just to lose a game in that fashion. But the ownership made him get rid of the offensive coaches and the offensive coordinator. The
Yeah.
offense didn't give up 31 points late in the
Yep.
ball game. That was the defense who did that. So some curious moves out there in LA with the Chargers. I think they'll always have a chance because they're going to have a great quarterback in this league. If you have a great quarterback, typically you have a chance to win football games.
Yep.
Brandon Staley is not an idiot, despite some of the dumb moves that he's made. He definitely knows his defense. He's definitely puts together a good structure of it all. They've got some weapons at the wide receiver position. They've got one of the best dual-purpose backs in the league, even though the rushing attack really fell off late in the season. So there's pieces there, but Brandon Staley has to first get out of his own way. He's got to recognize and look the man in the mirror that he is often the detriment to the Chargers, and he's the reason why they're losing, not the reason why they're winning occasionally.
Absolutely. I agree. And then let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. A lot to talk about here with Lamar Jackson. He wants a big deal. He wants Deshaun Watson money, 230 plus fully guaranteed. I expect a lot of people expect the Ravens to franchise tag him. How do you think that goes? Do you think that Lamar could request or demand a trade? I know that he wants job security, right? Financial security. And with his style of play, he's more likely to get injured. So you'd think he'd want that security, that long-term deal, right?
Yeah, running quarterbacks don't play to 12 years or 15 years, or definitely not 23 like Tom Brady. You just
Yeah.
take too much pounding. Defenders are trained assassins like myself, and when we see the quarterback running the football, I want to hit everybody as hard as I can, but I
Yeah.
especially want to hit that quarterback as hard as I can. So Lamar Jackson's style of play puts him at risk. I think the Ravens recognize that, which makes them reluctant to do a Deshaun Watson style deal. Lamar Jackson recognizes that, which makes him want that Deshaun Watson style deal. So we'll see what happens this offseason. It's definitely going to be interesting. That team, pretty much struggled, couldn't score a lot of points without Lamar Jackson. The offense never really found its rhythm pretty much all season long. They had a couple of nice games, but never really in full stride. So there's a core there, I think, but they've got to get this quarterback situation figured out. It is hard for a quarterback to be the leader on the team when he is in the back of his head, he's got doubts about his standing on the team. How does ownership feel about him? How do the coaches feel about him? His contract status is up in the air. So they put themselves in a tough spot here with Lamar Jackson. I can imagine they could have gotten this done maybe earlier without the same demands that Lamar has put out now. But when Lamar is acting as his own agent and he feels justified in his stance, now things become personal. When your agent's involved, there's a bit of a buffer between you and the team. But now it's his mom and himself and a couple of lawyers are negotiating this deal. That's going to make things personal fast, and feelings are definitely going to get hurt in the process.
And something to that too, Ravens backup quarterback who filled in, Tyler Huntley, makes the Pro Bowl. And what do you think about that? Back in your day, man, the Pro Bowl used to be one of my favorite games. It used to be so much fun. Now the Pro Bowl sucks, in my opinion. Now, I don't know what it is anymore. I'm gonna have a hard time watching it. I miss it when it was the week after the Super Bowl in Honolulu, AFC versus NFC. And what do you think about all that?
I think it's sad that the
Yeah.
Pro Bowl is at where it's at, but at the same time, I recognize why. Players today just make so much money. For me, the 25,000 for the loser and the $50,000 for the winner, that was money I wanted.
Hmm.
So you get invited to the Pro Bowl, you invite your mom and dad, maybe your in-laws, you bring a sibling or two. Every time you sit down for a meal in Hawaii, it's $100 a person. So you want to be able to pay for that trip, which from your Pro Bowl winning check. So the game
Hmm.
became important to
Yeah.
guys, and I think there was just it was a higher honor back then. Very few players bowed out of it. I can remember, I'm being in the hot tub with John Elway, and I'm sitting at the pool bar next to, Derek Thomas and, Reggie White's over there holding court. It was a very special time that I got a chance to be a part of those Pro Bowls that I was a part of. I'm sad these guys today, don't recognize it in the same way, don't respect it in the same way. We'll
Yeah.
see if this skills competition makes for some kind of compelling television because they had to kill the game. The game wasn't even flag football. It was barely even touch football. There were
Last year.
referees who
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
blowing the whistle when no one was even touching the ball carrier. So that couldn't keep on going on. They had to do something different, and there was no way that guys were going to be willing to put their bodies at risk unless the league was willing to put a lot more money behind that game. And a lot of the guys in the Pro Bowl, they make over $1 million a game, and the league definitely ain't going to match those kind of salaries. So we're going to get the same crappy efforts we saw the last couple of seasons. A change needed to happen.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. You got a lot of good points there. Just today, the GOAT, Tom Brady, announces his retirement. Surprised a lot of people. Myself, I thought that he was gonna try to give it one more year. What did you think about his decision? Do you think it's over? He says it's over. Do you think there's a chance maybe he still comes back? I mean, he retired last year.
I think there's a very, very small percentage chance because Brett Favre retired a couple times too.
Yeah, right.
And Tom hasn't fallen completely off the cliff. There were some throws this year where I was like, "Ooh, man!" Finally, Father Time starting to catch up with Tom a bit. But I think what was the most telling clip of Tom the entire season was going around Twitter last week, and it was Tom on the sideline talking to some of his teammates, and they were completely checked out. They were not listening to Tom. And I wonder if Tom saw that or even felt that on the sideline that these guys just aren't dialed into me and what I'm bringing. And as you become an older player, it's more and more difficult with each passing season to relate to your younger teammates.
Mhm.
I played till I was 38 years old, and it's hard to relate to a 21-year-old. I got a family, I got kids. I'm paying for private school. I'm just in a different space in my life than they are. They're trying to go to the club and they're trying to put more diamonds in their watches. We're on completely different wavelengths. So I wonder if that was also a factor for Tom, and obviously had all the personal issues this season with his family. So you couple all those together. I wasn't surprised to hear the news, but again, I still think there's a small chance, tiny small chance that he may come back for one more.
Yeah, and if he does, I can't think of a better spot than the 49ers. You talk about a team that needs a quarterback, a team that's absolutely loaded on both sides of the ball, a great offensive coach, play caller. Man, if Brady wants to go for one more ring and then retire, I can't think of a better spot than San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I've heard about a number of different possible landing spots for Tom, but the San Francisco situation from a quarterback perspective, and now that their defensive coordinator spot is open, is the
Yep,
top of the league as far as open spots.
absolutely. And then also you got an older quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, waiting to see what he does this offseason. There's been a lot of talk about possibly the Jets. I know the Jets hired Nathaniel Hackett as their OC, and all signs pointing to trying to lure Aaron Rodgers over to the Jets. What do you think happens with Aaron Rodgers? Do you think he retires, or could you see a trade, or maybe back in Green Bay?
Well, the Nathaniel Hackett situation, we speculated as local media here in Denver that was part of the reason why Nathaniel Hackett was hired to be the head coach, the possibility of luring Aaron Rodgers. Of course, we
Yeah.
got Russell Wilson. So we'll see how that all plays out. That could actually be the worst trade in NFL history, considering all the draft capital it took to get Russell Wilson, and the worst contract in NFL history because a $250 million for a guy who can't play. That's a lot of money. So we'll see how this plays out this year now that Sean Payton's over there with the Russell Wilson. But for Aaron Rodgers, one of the signs that you are done as an older player is when you are unwilling to put in the work in the offseason, when you are
Mhm.
unwilling to make the sacrifices in the offseason. So to hear Aaron Rodgers talk about his young receivers this year and how they need to grow up and this, that, and the other, it's like, dude, you didn't spend any time in Green Bay with those young receivers. There is a
Yeah,
certain sacrifice you have to make as an older player. I know you want to, hang out in Hollywood and do cool stuff and host Jeopardy and all that's great, but you still have to carve out, the part of your life for football as well. So if Aaron Rodgers is looking to repeat what he did this last offseason, then I would not be interested in signing Aaron Rodgers up because he's going to want special treatment in the offseason, not going to be with his receivers if it's going to be a new team. Then he's also going to want big time money as
yeah,
well. So you're going to want to take up 15% of my salary cap and you're not going to participate in the offseason program, then no, thank you. Because I'm not looking for that. I need something more than that.
yeah, yeah. That's gonna be very interesting to see what happens there. Everyone's favorite to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. I mean, it kind of changed late, in the season, but the Buffalo Bills, they were a preseason favorite. They were playing at home in Buffalo in the snow and kind of got the doors beaten off of them, the brakes beaten off them by the Bengals. What do you think of the Bills now? They made it to the AFC Championship game in 2020, and now 2 years in a row they've gotten to the divisional round and can't get past that. Are the Bills going the wrong direction? Are they any closer to getting back to the Super Bowl?
You have to figure out as a team on how to peak at the right time.
Yeah.
They peaked too early. It is
Mhm.
impossible to maintain the razor's edge of sharpness. I was on that '07 Patriots team where the season was perfect until we lost the Giants in the Super Bowl. It is so hard, and the pressure that comes with those all those expectations. The Bills were everyone's preseason favorite. So
Yeah.
you have that. You have them playing well early and peaking early. Josh Allen beginning to have red zone issues, interception issues later in the season. Couldn't get those solved. I think that offense was missing Brian Daboll as a play caller. Then you
Yep.
add in the DeMar Hamlin situation and all
Yeah.
the emotion that comes with that. All that emotion is draining. It'll drain you. Not only will you be draining to try to maintain the razor edge of sharpness, but a situation like that will drain you as well. So I think that the Bengals caught a Bills team that was still a good Bills team, but was just drained and exhausted by the effort of it all. I think it's far better to stumble the first 4 to 6 weeks in the season, get things figured out, and get on a hot streak. That's what you want to do. That's the ideal way to go into the offseason rather than just trying to hold on as Buffalo was, because their best football was definitely earlier this year.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good take. Um, Cowboys, man, the Cowboys back in your day, the Cowboys were dominant. They were, America's team and going to the Super Bowl all those years. Um, Jerry Jones desperately wants to get back to the Super Bowl. He's paid Dak Prescott. He's got all these weapons around him. But again, they keep coming up short and they can't get back to a conference championship game. How do you feel about the Cowboys going forward? And are you confident that Dak is the guy? Because he kind of struggled down the stretch.
Yeah, Dak, tied for the league worst interception number this season. Yeah, the turnovers are just unacceptable. And your number one job as an offensive player is when we trust you with the ball. Is at the end of the play, the ball better be in our hands.
Hmm.
And so far too often for the Cowboys, particularly late in the season, it wasn't. And Dak was just throwing some bad balls. So I've got some concerns with Dak. It's so interesting that Kellen Moore is now out there in San Diego because he interviewed for head coaching jobs, then was fired by the Cowboys. So some of this coaching search stuff is just fascinating to me. Byron Leftwich, same situation, interviewed for head
Yeah,
coaching jobs last year, fired this year. Did he
yeah.
forget how to coach? It's all that's so fascinating. But for the Cowboys, I think Dan Quinn, the reason why he hasn't taken head coaching jobs the last 2 seasons, because he recognizes Jerry Jones' lack of comfort with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is now on the hot seat. Mike McCarthy will be calling offensive plays this season.
Okay.
So it is a big time. Prove it to Jerry Jones year for Mike McCarthy, because you're the head coach and you'll be the play caller. If Dak Prescott doesn't get better, if this offense doesn't perform better, Mike McCarthy will be gone and Dan Quinn will take over.
Wow. Yeah. And Dan Quinn, that could be an upgrade, to be honest. Dan Quinn's been a really good coach when given the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you seen anything like what the 49ers and rookie quarterback Brock Purdy did this year? Mr. Irrelevant in the draft, a rookie, and all the success that he had. It sucks a lot that he got hurt in the NFC Championship game, because I think that would have been a much better game had he not gotten hurt. But the closest thing we've seen is maybe Tom Brady. I mean, I've never heard of Mr. Irrelevant having that much success. What did you think of all that?
Well, I was calling the Dolphins 49ers game where Brock Purdy came into the game.
Okay.
Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt that first series. Brock Purdy comes in. I had done a few Iowa State games while Brock Purdy was at Iowa State, so I was familiar with him. I didn't know that he was Mr. Irrelevant, but with his first pass completed in that game, he became the first Mr. Irrelevant to complete a pass in an NFL game. Then with his
Wow.
first touchdown pass in that game, he became the first Mr. Irrelevant to throw a touchdown pass in an NFL game. Then they won the game, and he became the first Mr. Irrelevant to win an NFL game as a quarterback. Then the next week, he became the first Mr. Irrelevant to be the starting quarterback in an NFL game. So a complete Cinderella season for Brock Purdy. But I think he's got the decision making that Kyle Shanahan really likes. Kyle Shanahan has really struggled with Jimmy Garoppolo because there's 3 to 5 plays a game where Jimmy Garoppolo would just do something dumb or have a completely head scratching play. And Kyle just could not take that. So Brock Purdy may be the best option from a do no harm perspective, outside of maybe a Tom Brady, to lead that offense, because they've got weapons at tight end. They got weapons at receiver. They made the trade for McCaffrey, got a weapon at the running back spot. They got a Hall of Fame left tackle. So they've got some players on that offense, and they just need a steady quarterback under center. And to your point, too bad Brock Purdy got hurt in that playoff game. Otherwise, yes, that clearly would have been a far more compelling game. They needed a better plan to block Hassan Riddick, because he wrecked basically their playoff opportunity for them with that hit on Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy, never seen it before like that. Never seen a quarterback step in to a situation quite that good and be able to almost overcome our expectations. We were hopeful that he would do well, but overcame my expectations considering what I saw of him at Iowa State.
Absolutely. And then so barring a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers addition this offseason, where do you think this is going to leave Trey Lance? My gut is saying when you trade up to number 3 overall and take Trey Lance, there's ego involved in that. You still want to make it look like you made the right decision when you pick Trey Lance. I still think that they're looking for an opportunity to give Trey Lance a chance. Do you think if it comes down to Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, there's a quarterback competition in the preseason and in camp, or how do you think that leaves Trey Lance?
Well, Kyle Shanahan said today Jimmy Garoppolo will not be back.
Yeah,
So that's one part of that quarterback picture. So now I like Brock Purdy. If I'm a coach of that team, Brock Purdy and the steadiness, his ability to operate within the offense, not make a dumb play. Trey Lance has a long, long way to go. I
yeah,
had Trey Lance, Justin Fields, first game of the season, that rainstorm in Chicago, and let's just say both quarterbacks left a lot to be desired. They
yeah.
couldn't complete screen passes even after the rain stopped. They couldn't complete screen passes. I mean, that's football 101. They couldn't complete slants. That's football 101. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm looking at Brock Purdy versus Trey Lance. I know there's some potential over there with Trey Lance, but I need the production now. How much, with the, injuries that we see sometimes for George Kittle, for Christian McCaffrey, guys who have trouble staying healthy. I'd rather hitch my wagon to Brock Purdy than to Trey Lance and try to develop a quarterback versus having one ready to go.
Yeah, I like that. And then AFC Championship game, Bengals Chiefs, a great game, a rematch of last year's game. Um, did you feel like the Bengals came in a little too confident, a little too cocky? They had won three straight. Post game against the Bills, they were saying they were calling it Joe Burrowhead Stadium. I felt like that was asking for trouble. Do you think that fired up Chiefs players and played a factor in the outcome?
Part of the late season push that the Bengals put together was because they had a chip on their shoulder. They
Mm-hmm.
felt disrespected. They felt people weren't giving them the credit that they were due because they played in the Super Bowl last year. So they wore that chip on their shoulder, and even they talked about the neutral site ticket sales when all those Buffalo fans bought the 50,000 tickets to that game. So they took all that bulletin board material and they internalized it and they rolled with that late in the season. And then to turn around and then give the
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs the bulletin board material and have them with a chip on their shoulder, make them feel disrespected. I thought it was a terrible turn of psyche for Cincinnati. They need to keep playing the underdog role. It was not time for them to get all cocky and confident. That's what they did. And they gave that underdog role and feeling to the Chiefs. The Chiefs were able to take advantage of it.
Yep. Great win for Kansas City. They're back in the Super Bowl. Three in the past 4 years. Three times they've been in the Super Bowl. This is gonna be a great Super Bowl, huh? Chiefs, Eagles. You got Andy Reid against his old team. You got the battle of the Kelsey brothers. How do you see this going? It should be. Do you think it's a close game, a good battle?
I think it will be a good battle. Outside of Brock Purdy being hurt, I expected all. I could see all four of the teams that were in the championship weekend, being in the Super Bowl and probably winning it, depending on how the ball bounced, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to this one. It'll be two, great offenses, a little bit different. Obviously, the Eagles led by their offensive line, and they can just move people. We saw them just knock people off the ball here in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts is going to be efficient versus Patrick Mahomes, who and Travis Kelsey. They're going to be magicians. It's going to determine for me. It's going to be the defenses. The Eagles led the league in sacks this year. They had four players with double-digit sacks, which I believe is an NFL record. The fifth guy on that sack list was Fletcher Cox with 7.5. Last time I checked, Fletcher Cox, he can play too. So they got some horses over there on that defense versus the Chiefs defense, which during the regular season, that secondary gave up the most passing touchdowns of any team in the league.
Yeah.
So we shall see if the Chiefs' magic on offense has enough firepower to withstand all the points that their defense is going to give up.
Yeah, even in today's passing league, NFL, I'm big on defense wins championship. Um, I'm leaning Eagles barely. I think they find a way to get it done. Do you think I'm sure you're a defense wins championships guy as well.
Well, I got my former CU teammate over there with the Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of rooting for Eric. I got some other teammates in the front office for the Chiefs as well. But I can completely see the Eagles winning this game. That running attack, that offensive line, the efficiency of their offense, Jalen Hurts, now further removed from the injury, should be much healthier. And again, that defensive front seven, that defensive front four, as they rotate guys in and out, that's a lot to deal with for an offensive line in Kansas City that really, doesn't have a ton of studs up there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for your time, Chad. It's always a blast having you on the show, and great to talk with you again.
Well, thanks for having me on again. Yeah, this was always good. Kind of wrap up the season. We'll see if your Eagles can get the win. And nice talking to you, my friend. Take it easy, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great one, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and peace out.